Hello and welcome to a very special FSR video inside the British Grand Prix. My name is Edward Hunter and alongside me is Burst eSports' own Tom Oldenmenger. Tom, first off, congratulations for finishing second in the pro race just before the one that we're about to talk about. That's your best finish of the season so far. But more crucially, the British Grand Prix in World Championship happened and there's lots of interesting things to analyse from what was a very unexpected race. I don't think it quite played out like how a lot of people were expecting.
Yeah, exactly. It was very interesting with Brakshock starting from pole. So he looked to be really fast and then, from there it didn't quite happen, it seemed.
So let's really dig into the weeds here, Tom, and talk about why it didn't work out for Janis Brakshock. Of course, on pole by a tenth and a half from Colin Spork with Dennis Jordan in third, and the main title contenders further down the pack. It really seemed when Janis Brakshock sprinted away at the start like he had the pace to get a really, really good result, but in the end, having to make 3 stops instead of 2 like a lot of his rivals did, that seemed to be what cost him.
Yeah, his start was amazing, and he just pulled a gap immediately. And I guess he was simply trying to break DRS because he got up to, up to a safe distance from DRS, and then he sort of seemed to hold station there. Yeah, so that seemed to be the plan: just get a gap, make sure that Spork behind doesn't get DRS, and it seemed to work fine from there. And the gap stayed really consistent, and it's only until after lap 10 that Spork starts to gain a little bit on him.
So then we get to lap 13 where Brakshock makes that fateful first pit stop for another set of hard tyres. And then it's that sinking feeling because not only does Janis Brakshock find himself mired down in the pack, quite a long way down the pack, but it's several laps before anybody else that he's competing with pits. And that means you're definitely on an alternate strategy, and also you've maybe not pushed the tyres perhaps as far as everyone else has. And that is never a nice feeling, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So, honestly, I'm not really sure why he pitted when he did. I've been looking at his lap times, and at the point where he pitted, his lap times were still super consistent. So after 10 laps, he was doing 34.7, 34.7, 34.7. So it seemed like tire-wise there wasn't an issue yet. And if I were his engineer, I wouldn't have called him in at that point yet because, his pace was still pretty much the same as Spork's. Spork was starting to close in a little bit, but he still had, 1.5 seconds gap. So there's still a couple of laps that you can still keep going before he gets DRS or before any issues really start to come up. And then if you look back in the field, he would come out in P20, I believe. But if you look at his lap times compared to P20, he was, 7-8 tenths faster than that guy. So just stay out 1 lap longer, and they've gotten P20. Stay out 2 laps longer, you've gotten P19. So there really wasn't a reason to pit unless you expected everyone to be on a 3-stop. Because then you don't want to get undercut, and you basically want to be the first to pit. But on a track like this, a 3-stop to me always seemed unlikely to happen. But yeah, maybe he and his engineer thought differently, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, and with that early stop, he committed himself to that strategy. And then even by the end, we saw Dennis Jordan actually overtake him on track right before he made that final stop for the mediums, by which point he ended the race. Instead of even fighting for the podium, down in 8th, he couldn't even get past Danahan, unfortunately for him and the Brabham Arnage team. And the telling thing was Mark Schluter, who started outside the top 10, did the same strategy and finished only about 5 seconds behind him. So that really shows the stark difference, really. A decent result for Mark Schluter, his first top 10 finish, but Janis Brakshock, another missed opportunity, and that seems sadly to be the theme of Arnage Brabham's season so far. So hopefully that quali pace they can get a better result out of it later in the season.
Yeah, let's hope for them, absolutely. Another thought that I had was that maybe they simply went for a qualifying setup, make sure that their qualifying pace is really good. So at least you're at the front of the field. It's something that RHG seems to have been doing so far with, I'd say, a decent amount of success. Because if you look later on in the race, I've been comparing lap times, and it seems like initially these first 10 laps he was really, really fast. But then after that and later on in the race, every stint it seemed like he was lacking some pace, at least compared to the front runners. Now, of course, he lost time in traffic. After his pit stop, he gained about 7 seconds on Dennis, which is decent. But if you look at the lap times, after his pit stop, he starts doing some 33s, but then drops into the 34s because of traffic. And then when the traffic clears, he's in the low 34s, high 33s. So if you compare that to his first stint, the start of the race, that's maybe 0.3 faster. And if you compare that to Jordan and Spork, after they pitted, they were almost a second faster than what they were doing in the first stint. So it seemed like, maybe he was simply using a lot of boost to stay in front of Spork. And then when his battery started to drain, his true pace showed, which seemed to have been quite a bit slower than those of the eventual podium finishers.
But the other question really is, why was it so difficult to overtake at Silverstone? We got the 2 DRS zones, one at the end of the Hangar Straight, the other on the Wellington Straight, of course, into turn 4, and lots of overtaking opportunities too, it would seem. So it really felt unusual, or unexpected at least, that everyone was stuck behind each other for so long. Do you think it was that the strategy convergence? Everyone seemed to be on the same strategies, so that's what was so hard to overtake, with a few exceptions, or is it the nature of the derrière with this car?
Yes, to both. So exit turn 4, that's a decent opportunity to overtake into Brooklands, but of course the other guy knows that as well, so he can just use boost to defend there. And the straight isn't all that long, and then you head into a couple of corners where you can go on the inside, but then that's the outside for the next corner, so you always get into this battle where it's easy. If you defend well, if you place your car well, it's possible to defend in the first DRS, so in the first proper overtaking point, and then the next one down the Hangar Straight. The issue is, yes, you have DRS, but before that you have Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, which are high-speed corners. So if you're right behind, you get into dirty air and you lose time. So the guy in front will always pull a bit of a gap, and then the Hangar Straight itself is not long enough to offset that. So even though you have DRS, you can't really get close enough, and then it's into Stowe, which is not a corner where you have to brake hard. So it's the nature of the track which makes it really difficult to overtake if you got high downforce cars. And then if everyone is on the same strategy, then where are you going to make the difference?
Exactly, but let's go into one driver who did make a difference today with his tyre saving, and that was Dennis Jordan. So, of course, Braxock pits. Colin Spork, who won this race last year, let's not forget, is suddenly in the lead and thinks, right, this is my race to win. And then suddenly Jordan sneaks up behind him, and then a couple of laps, I think, before the first pit stops, Jordan attacks him and makes a brilliant move into Copse then. So could you talk us through that moment, please, Tom?
As you can see, Dennis is quite close now here, and when he exits, you can see he's decently close and he just dumps a lot of battery. And then this is kind of reminiscent of Hamilton versus Verstappen, but
the good ending.
Yeah, the good one. Although it wasn't too far of a crash actually, because Dennis here almost loses it. And if we look at Spork, he just get loads of understeer, and he also goes off the track. So they gave each other more space than Lewis and Max did, but it almost ended in tears anyway. And there was some clever driving here from Spork as well. So Dennis, it's there's a decent amount of risk in what Dennis did here. Then again, he did have a lot of overspeed, and Spork is a very, very good driver. So I guess he also put a lot of trust in Spork, and you can see that Spork was aware of what Dennis was doing, because you can see the pedal inputs on the left here. So he's going full throttle here. And then when Dennis comes up, he actually presses the brake and lets Dennis past. Because, well, he knows that going side by side there, that's just gonna end in tears. So he presses the brake, lets Dennis past, and then just tries to stick close to maybe take advantage of a mistake from Dennis, even though he makes one himself, or just stay close to re-overtake down the hanger straight. And then you can see him go through Maggots Beckett. And this is what I was talking about with the dirty air. Look at how much Dennis is gaining here. So there's quite a decent gap, and now Spork does get DRS, but not a lot of slipstream, and both of them are probably dumping their battery, and yeah, he's not even able to get close. So that just shows how difficult it is to stay close enough to actually make an overtake here.
Yeah, so a crucial move in getting that track position crucially allowed Dennis to really stretch his legs and start to build a gap behind, him eventually winning by over about 4 seconds, I think, in the end. So, yeah, some brilliant driving from both of them, and Spork unfortunately had to settle for second place, which was still his best result of the season, of course, Tom. So let's move on then to another interesting battle that happened on track between, of course, your teammate, Jene Simoncic, fighting with Jake Danahan near the middle to end stint of the race. So this is on lap 37 and 38, essentially, where Danahan is being caught by Jene Simoncic and, of course, Janos Braksok, we talked about on that different strategy. And Danahan, I think it's interesting to see this defensive driving, because Danahan tries to back Simoncic into Braksok in order to defend his position, of course. And they're all on quite worn tyres at this phase as well. So could you talk us through that battle as well? Because that was absolutely fascinating to watch.
Yeah, so actually it's been almost a race-long battle, and basically what's been happening the entire time. So, yeah, Simoncic gets really close here, but he, well, you can look at the exits that Jake Danahan gets. Like, he just pulls away, and, yes, Jene gets some DRS, but then they can both use the battery. And then it's just perfect placement from Danahan. Like, Jene's on the inside here, but then Jake is on the inside here, and then nothing you can do really. So it's yeah, another attempt over, and then when you go through Maggots Beckett, just the gap gets too big, like we just saw with Dennis and Colin. If we go one lap later, it's Jene going on the inside, maybe trying to mess up Jake's exit, and then I don't know whether this was luck, this slide, or skill, but it works perfectly because Simoncic loses some momentum, and then Danahan goes on the inside, so a bit harder defense, and then Simoncic has to make more meters, so he has to slot in behind, and then again, perfect placement from Danahan. Nothing you can do, and I guess this summarizes a lot of Jene's race.
Exactly, it was a very difficult race, and it started with him qualifying 10th right behind Jake Danahan, and the big contrast is with his teammate David Mrokcek was able to get himself into the top 4 in the end by overtaking Danahan early on, whereas Simoncic, his race was defined by that battle with Danahan, and it ended, of course, with him undercutting him in that final stint, which was how Jene Simoncic was able to get that 6th position, which he held on to the end. Quite a big job, though, doing 14 laps on the mediums near the end, but Simoncic, as ever, pulled it off.
Yeah, we're talking about Dennis's tire management, which is awesome, but we can't forget about Jene, who is also really good at pushing the tires when needed, but also saving them, because 14 laps on the mediums, that's long, especially if you want to do them at a proper pace. You can see where Jene enters the pits. He's right behind Jake. A lap later, Jake exits the pits and he is quite far behind. So from being just in front of Jene to being, what would this be, a second, 1.5 seconds behind him. So the undercut is really powerful here. And yeah, Jake has to do 13 laps on his mediums, which is also a long time. And yeah, that 1 lap difference wasn't enough to get close and overtake, especially I guess since Jake also had to look behind him and try and defend against Braksok.
Yeah, there we go. And that was really how it ended at the flag as well, in that order. So great respectful racing between not only Spork and Jordan for the lead, but Simoncic and Danahan potentially for important World Championship positions. Not so clean, unfortunately, was the first lap. And of course, it was a very, very difficult day for RHG, sadly, with Liam Duval being basically eliminated on the opening lap, and Adam Maguire as well, also not seeing the checkered flag. So let's go through Duval first, because he didn't qualify especially well, and then found not only himself in the middle of a 4-wide sandwich at Luffield, but he saw accident happen up ahead, which sadly he didn't really have any time to avoid. So talk us through that scenario, Tom, and Liam Duval's thought process for it.
Yeah, so it's quite a chaotic moment. A lot is happening in a very short amount of time. So it starts with basically Maguli, who is on the outside of Callas, and then Callas runs a bit wide. And then they make contact, and at that point it's still fine. But on the outside is Hakimi, who doesn't realize that they're 3 wide, turns in, hits Marguli, and then sends him into this really awkward spin, and it's like a slow motion T-bone from Callas at that point, and it's the perfect roadblock where a lot of drivers get involved, and it's especially unfortunate if you're in a championship battle. We look on board with Liam, so at this point it's all still fine, and then here everything converges, and there's nowhere he can go because Liam is also locked in left-right, so he can't move to the side to escape. He does actually press the brake to avoid the incident from Callas and Marguli in front of him, but it seems like he gets hit by Mosquito on his left, which sends him slightly further forward, and then everyone hits the incident anyway, and at that point, I mean, he's in the gravel, he's lost his front wing, and we just saw multiple instances of how difficult it is to overtake, to make your way through the field, and it's game over at that point, unfortunately.
Yeah, so on the podium last round, sadly in the wall before the end of the first lap at Silverstone here a round later. So bitter disappointment for Liam Duval. I think he was quite literally the cork in a 4-wide bottle there. So with the accident ahead, it was never going to end particularly well. So I think the next question is what happened to Adam Maguire, and I think for that answer we need to go to Kops in lap 32, of course. So he's got Jene Simoncic catching up behind him. Maguire has stayed out a bit and is in 9th position at this point. And suddenly he makes a little mistake with big consequences, Tom.
Yeah, it's the penalty didn't fit the crime. He was just in his train. He was, doing quite well, and then he just moves a few centimeters too far to the left. He touches the grass, and at that point, at these speeds, he was going almost 300 kph, and then you brake on the grass. There's nothing you can do. And to his credit, when he's going sideways, he's actually full lock to the left to try and either catch the slide, which at these speeds is not going to happen, or turn his car so he will hit the wall straight on, which will, you'll lose your front wing, but you might save some suspension damage, save repair time, and then you're able to continue, because you don't want big suspension damage and then have a bent steering wheel and continue your race from there. So looked like he tried to prevent it. Then he was stationary for a long time. He made it back to the pits. So I don't know, something or someone told him to try and continue. But he went to the pits, probably saw that the damage repair was going to be too long, and he gave up from there. Which again is really unfortunate for the entire team. Yeah.
Yeah, and the upshot of this is, of course, that RHG have now lost second in the team's championship to Scuderia Ferrari, of course, one of their main rivals. So big loss of momentum for RHG, and they will be hoping that when we get to Imola on the 6th of August, they can strike back. I'm sure Duval and Maguire will be very eager to do that. But for closing thoughts then, Tom, it's really starting to turn into a 2-horse race now. 2 wins in a row for Dennis Jordan. Jene Simoncic, that championship lead cut to just 7 points now. It's really game on for the remaining 5 races of the season. Yeah,
and it's looking like a 2-horse race, but then again, what happened to RG could happen to Simoncic, could happen to Jordan, could happen to anyone. So the gaps aren't that quite big yet, so it could be more teams, more drivers coming into play later on. But this is looking like a championship where it's going to be won on the bad days. And I think, yes, Dennis won, but Järne had a bad day and he still finished P6, which on a track like this, I think is an impressive comeback. So, I mean, we'll have to wait 5 more races, but we'll see how important this 6th place will be at the end.
Yeah, the burst man, always looking on the positives for his teammate there. So thanks for your unbiased insight, Tom, as well as a little bit of cheerleading for Järne, but I'm sure Dennis Jordan won't be too upset after the result, having getting 2 wins in a row. But anyway, as I said, next round is Imola, 6th of August. Make sure you don't miss it. I've been Edward Hunter. He's been Tom Oldenmenger. Thank you very much for watching.